Good day and welcome to the Offside Music Podcast. My name is Kemi Okenyodo, and Okenyodo is out traveling. I doubt if he'll be able to join us during this recording, but he did make plans to. So today we have a very, very distinguished and well-established guest in the civil liberty space in Nigeria. Her name is Mrs. Kemi Okenyodo. I hope I didn't get it wrong. Mrs. Okenyodo is a distinguished expert in security, governance, and development, particularly within the Nigerian and broader African context. She has built a reputation as a leading figure in these fields through her extensive work in various capacities. Her career is marked by deep commitment to improving security governance and promoting inclusive development strategies. Her expertise is frequently sought in policy formulation, program development, and capacity building, making her a respected voice in both national and international forums on security and governance issues. In addition to her professional achievements, Mrs. Okenyodo is known for her active role in civil society, where she has been instrumental in advocating for reforms in security sector governance and accountability. Her work often bridges the gap between government agencies, civil society organizations, and international bodies, fostering collaborative approaches to addressing complex security challenges. Her contributions extend to mentorship and thought leadership, where she inspires others through her dedication to creating more secure and just societies. Her influence is evident in the numerous projects and initiatives she has led or contributed to, reflecting her enduring commitment to improving the landscape of security and governance in Africa. And we look forward to this conversation with her. Welcome to the podcast, Mrs. Okenyodo. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right.
You got it right the first time. Okenyodo, as spelled.
Okenyodo. Is it from like Benin or Ondo?
No. It's from Benue. Actually, my father-in-law was an only child, so he combined his name and his father's name, so both names don't disappear. So I don't think you'll find it anywhere.
It's very unique. I know I haven't. It sounded like something you see on the outskirts of Ondo. There's some very unique. I think they have a very, very, very unique names in Nigeria from maybe not as unique as the history that you just gave out. So, well, it's nice to have you here. Once again, no kids with us some way. I was supposed to join, but let's start with, in essence, you are a prominent figure in Nigerian civil liberties movements with a focus on rule of law, security, police reform, and democratic governance. So how did you get started in that field?
It's by accident. I was looking for a job. I was in legal practice initially, and I got bored with legal practice. And I just saw an advert in the papers, request an organization then known as Center for Law Enforcement Education, advertising for a gender program officer. So I applied, I went in for the interview, and the rest is history.
That's interesting. That's interesting. You got bored with it.
I got bored with cases. I got bored with us being assigned cases, and you get to court and nothing ever happens. You get there, the SANs, then the likes of FRA comes. Once FRA steps into your courtroom, you just know that you're done.
Bar had all the cases in the world, just puts in his pocket and helps. And all those judges were.
You see the piles of cases, and you can't leave. So you sit down until he finishes.
And most of those judges at the point in time were like his his pupils. So just like family or friend, I was like, what? It's just a finger. Yes, yes. Well, that's interesting. So, I mean, given that history of getting, I really empathize with I mean, I think in this area, most people can empathize with getting bored with the law, but
Mhm.
I had an uncle was a judge, maybe longest serving judge in Eastern Nigerian history. And he loved disparaging lawyers, as if he wasn't a lawyer at a point in time, but he loved doing that. Yeah, essentially, to quote him, he would always say that all lawyers are useless. So, so that says something as much about him as about the law. But who would you say were your early role models in the field of civil liberties in Nigeria?
Early. Um, I'll say I started engaging in the field when I got into the sector, and my boss, Innocent Chukuma, had a very strong influence on me, and Chidi Odinkalu. I'll say those two really helped to change, shape my trajectory within the within the movement in the country.
Oh, that's interesting. The late Innocent Chukuma, right?
Mm-hmm,
Oh, okay. What would you, I mean, given then and now, what would you say are the major challenges in today's Nigeria?
Now, more than before, I think there's first the sector has become heavily politicized. So when I joined then, I remember, yes, there were issues, there were ethnic and religious issues, right? However, you didn't see them play out within the sector. They were issues that the sector was jointly looking at, right? And I remember there was a Masob case then. I think the founder or the head of the movement was arrested, and all of us that were in Lagos, irrespective of religion, irrespective of tribe, were in the CLO office looking at the issue and preferring strategy and how we would come from different areas of strength, right, to support him. Um, then I look at now, right? I look at now. Even now, you have to be careful how you put your opinion forward because no matter how sincere you're being, somebody is going to puncture it either through the lens of religion or puncture it through the lens of uh, ethnicity, right? Those days, I mean, when you go for broader civil society meetings, especially when we're having elections, and you're having situation room conversation, when you're on the table, you're bringing insight from your geopolitical zone into the discourse so that there's a broader strategy in addressing this issue. And I'll give a good example. I think it was the elections that brought in, and I'm sorry I'm giving examples from the Southeast, but they resonate with me more. Um, the election that brought in Rochas. There was supposed to be a by-election, right? And
Mm-hmm.
everybody moved to Owerri. Situation room moved from Abuja to Owerri because it was critical. Everybody was there. Now, I doubt it. I doubt if such a movement would happen now. Honestly, sincerely, I doubt if it will happen now. Now everybody is to your tent to Israel. You know, we're seeing more the things that divide us than the things that bring us together. I'll look at the security landscape. I remember some years back when we were looking at the indices because we were conducting the National Crime Victimization Survey in Plain then, and we were looking at the development indicators across the country. And we could identify geopolitical zones that were going to have issues, right? And with the discussion we're having within the country on the insecurity trajectory, we're not able to draw, I doubt if we're able to draw lessons from other geopolitical zones or even the similarities in the way the insecurity um, landscape is evolving. We can't see it. Only reason we can't see it is because we're putting on tainted lenses. But if we put south, we put southeast, we put northeast together and put northwest, the trends are there.
Hmm.
And we are not seeing the trends.
I have a follow up to that though. Do you think there's an element, I don't know if it would be the main element or if it even exists. Do you think there's an element of hopelessness that people are just not no longer even bought into the system in any way, shape, or form? They just maybe at this point in time, they might just say going with the motions and going to their own tents. When you talk, like, I'm going to my tent, go to your tent kind of thing. So do you think there's an element of that involved?
I'm not sure. I'm being careful with my words. Hopelessness for who, right? Hopelessness, maybe for the average Nigerian or the lower level, I could say yes. But Nigeria has always thrived on a viable civil society ecosystem. And I would say the reason it's like this, what we're seeing, that there seems to be an element of hopelessness, is because the civil society ecosystem is not as vibrant as it used to be, right? The civil society ecosystem have some of us being very aligned to political parties and forgetting that we have a primary constituency. And there's some principles within our primary constituency that should help us carry into the political landscape, right? Instead of just aligning yourself without thinking or interrogating the political ecosystem you belong to. So I think that's the challenge.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting. It's interesting. I think there are echoes of those kind of. In this term, I'll just use this thing in terms of, I'll call it a smaller team. Tribal cannibalization probably is a better term. Cannibalized societies that exist all over Nigeria, especially, but I think it also exists in other parts of the world, and it's also fought by individuals that I think there are a lot of individuals that are just um, they, I think they create their own political identity by following those kind of
Yes.
tribal cannibal divisions in people. So for instance, so how would you assess the last 25 years of Nigerian how would you see the Nigerian political development? Are you satisfied the country is moving in the right direction in terms of the rule of law? Uh, do you have any optimism or just so much? How do you put that?
I think for the past 25 years, it's been bittersweet waters. So it's like we take some steps forward and then we take a couple of steps backward, right? It's not a sustained development or sustained growth. And I'll give example. So if I come from the 99, our first uh, coming into democracy again under OBJ, there was some form of, we felt that maybe we would get it right? Um, but we saw the skirmishes, right? Um, we saw attempt at a third term change of constitution. There was a pushback. It didn't work. It had to go. We seem to have gotten the acts of elections right. And if we are looking at untruncated electoral day or just announced elections, no problem. We're now seeing a trend whereby um, I would say judiciary is playing more critical role in our electoral process. So when you read some of the judgments that come out of the tribunals, we're asking ourselves, how did this come about? Is it the quality of the argument? Is it the quality of the judges? You know, that line is not so clear. And it wasn't like that. So how did we get to a point where the judiciary becomes a critical actor in determining the will of the people? Question mark. If you look at the internal party politics, right? The heavy monetization of the entire process. Some of us have this conversation when they say, "Oh, this person is not a good candidate." I'm like, is it not the candidates that the parties present to us that we're forced to vote for at the end of the day? So internal party politics have been hijacked by a couple of people who now determine who we should vote for. Attempts at bringing in independent candidates have been pushed back on by the parliament. What else? I mean, once upon a time, we thought we were progressing with women participation in the political space. And we were seeing dual gender tickets. But the so-called Southwest region that I come from, that we thought were progressive, have also rolled back on that, right? So it's, I don't know where to put it. That's why I said it's bittersweet waters. If you look at some indicators, you say, okay, yes. When people are coming out for registration for voters card, it's not because they really want to vote. It's because they've seen it as a means of national ID. Yeah, and you're sure to get it. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Right.
So that conversation,
Mhm.
democracy needs to be deepened.
Mm.
It needs to be deepened. It needs to be deepened not only at the elite level, but it needs to be deepened even in the schools for the kids that are coming up, even in the marketplace, so that people understand better that it's not just about voting. There's an element of engagement. There's an element of accountability. That accountability and engagement, I think we're not home.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I mean, what you're saying essentially is even when you start at the lower level, where we should say civics in terms of voter education is missing. Some people might point to the absence of even history in Nigerian schools, finalized by Obasanjo as one of those factors that we need more civics. We need better uh, party structure. You seem to have a level of optimism, a level of hope, not even optimism, a level of hope somewhere that things could get better. Somebody, I think it was Olisa Makobayi, had talked with him, talked about us being an illiberal democracy right now. And at some point in time, we can't always progress to being a liberal democracy. And I always have this when we bring up the conversation. Nowadays I don't even know. But I used to have this. People would say, talk about female participation, which I think on the face of it is good that you should have those that want to participate should be fully allowed to, no matter the. If you use the term identity or whatever you might I think if anybody that wants to participate should be able to participate irrespective of your background. I'll just broadly use that. But I would always say that, I mean, nowadays, I don't think it even matters. I would say that the only thing that used to the people that educate that point is that the corruption and the nastiness that is happening should spread around for everybody to contribute. And some a lot of people push back. No, I think it would be better for women to participate, for youth to participate, and I'm like, I think when you have a pipeline problem, let me put it that way. When you have a pipeline problem, it doesn't matter who you expand. If you know, and if you're being honest, you do know that whoever comes in there is not going to be any different. I think it's good to have people to understand, but at the end of the day, it just ends up being, well, we also want our share of quote unquote national cake. So we can see with the young lady who is a minister, and I think that's mad. I think that's scapegoating the lady. I don't think she's doing anything. And you know that girl don't do even worse than she does. I just think she happens to be the scapegoat of the moment. So I don't think I'm not saying what she's doing is right for anybody. I'm not saying what she's doing is right. I'm just saying like she's not doing anything different than. I think she's even mad. I think she's not even. I think they're right now. She has, I think maybe she's even getting punished because she was mad. In my opinion, I think she was just. She didn't understand how hard she's supposed to go. So, but anyway, so for me, let's talk about the security situation in Nigeria. The areas of the country that remain under the control of insurgent groups. Successive governments impress you with their efforts to combat security, focusing on human rights. I mean, this week we're talking about kidnappers and whatever time bandits expanding their operations right in Abuja itself, right? So, how do you see this affecting out intelligence?
I would say that there's a way we handle security challenges in the country. We don't look at the root cause. We treat the symptoms and not the root causes. So, for example, a couple of us were having a conversation I think last week, and looking at the Abuja environment. And I said to some of my colleagues, I said, when this administration came in and the FCT minister came in and demolished some of those illegal infrastructures and put in place very hard measures, some of us suspected that it could raise the crime index within the FCT, right? Because you've dislodged people from slum areas, illegal structures. You've tightened the processes of some informal trading or businesses operating. They won't go back. They won't go back to where they're coming from. They're going to stay. And then they're going to stay doing what? They become readily available. Some of them become readily available recruits for the criminal network, right? And then we see what we see. Armed robbery is no longer something we hear about per se, right? Now we hear about kidnapping. And then you ask yourself, have the kidnappers transformed into, no, have the armed robbers they've seized to go after mobile phones and other things and cash. And so the items to be stolen now are the human beings. The ransom is high. You made all of us register our SIMs and link our SIMs to NIN. You made us have BVN. You made us you put in place so many things. And yet you tell us you can't find the kidnappers. attacks. They're making calls. Calls cannot be traced. They are online because you see them posting videos. What exactly is happening? Are we saying that the security structures or the security organizations do not have the capacity to deal with this? If they're finding it difficult to deal with it in the FCT, that is supposed to be the seat of government, then you can imagine what's happening outside the FCT. So until they crack down on this and take it very seriously, you see, a friend of mine was telling me is that, they pay 15 million into your account today, legit business. The banks will call you and they'll say, oh, this amount was paid into your account. How are these monies being moved? So maybe some of us will say, is it a lack of willingness on the part of government to do what they ought to do? If it is a lack of willingness on the part of government and the security actors, why are they reluctant to act? Nigeria is a heavily policed state. Forget whatever it is that the impression they try to give. If they're looking for you, they will get you. If they want to come after you, they know how to get. So why is this particular crime going and it's metamorphosizing across the country? I'm not in the best position to answer that.
I think you were.
At times, some people would say, is there complicity?
I think I'm about to have the same place in that direction.
You know, and it's one of the reasons, and it's because we can't see effective response. That's why people will allude to complicity.
Yeah, it's telling. It's telling. I paid. We paid. Let me tell you, we as a family had contributed to my brother who got kidnapped right in the village in Udi. Right there in the village. And people that did it, I've been using their videos. Some videos made the rounds. Okay, those are the guys that did it. When my brother got kidnapped, there were five. One person got executed. They all came for a burial. So they believe he died in the US, and they all went back for a burial. And it was 4 p.m. broad daylight. And if you know this area of Enugu, Budi is like a more developed area where you have the Nigerian bridges and everything. So, it was wild. The guy that was executed had twisted his ankle. And it was just my brother who told the story. And yeah, he felt it was like, I guess you don't, you're coming from a different environment, which is one thing people that live overseas don't tend to appreciate, that when you live in these environments for a while, you still feel like you're Nigerian. To a large degree, you are, actually ethnically, but just from a mental perspective,
You're not.
you don't realize anymore. You don't even accept it tomorrow. Like, no, I'm still like, there, trust me. Even when you open your start speaking in this orbit, I mean, he twisted his ankle and was trying to tell him, like, down on my leg. And my brother was just like, the next thing he heard was the guys at his back. Even if there were five of them, the next thing they heard was
Wow.
the lights were getting clocked, bullets flying. One of the guys took a spin and still made sure that even the spin of the guy's head, made sure the guy was disturbed. By the time my ex was calling, I was like, yeah, don't worry, that is not the part. When I heard that, I was just like, all the time, I don't reach out on anybody because wife is pregnant then. Imagine a younger brother getting kidnapped. It's like, I'll just switch off my phone 7 to 7. So at least if the bad news came in, just have to give it a straight up and sedate her probably. I mean, I make light of it, but reality is reality. You have to do. And it's a real. I say this to say, even this week, you see on Twitter people fundraising.
Crowdfunding. How do we crowd fund for ransom?
Imagine, I don't. And it's no, I feel for people. I feel for. I just think the root causes are things that we don't talk about right now. But just like you, I'm talking about it. It's hard. You have to go on Twitter to crowdfund for answer. It's
And it's basically showing the trend in the country. To your tent, O Israel, right? Everybody is, you cater for yourself. You should be, you are the ones, you are your own government. You know, what we've described with the security situation is similar to any other thing. You have a house, you have a borehole that provides you with water. You have a security man in the front, at the front of your gate, for those that can afford it, that you are paying privately. If it's in a community, you have the vigilante groups that you are paying, and we have police, we have NSCDC, we have Peace Corps somewhere, right? If it is, you need to maintain the road, you're pulling money together to maintain that road, yet they come with tenement rates bill, right? I mean, it's just crazy, right? It looks like you have a government name, but you don't have a government in action. Indeed, you are your own government.
it's wild. It's wild. It's wild. It's wild. It's just it's. I didn't. It's a different environment. Actually, when it's a different environment. If you live in most of these other places, you have a participatory government, so you're free. If you want to be freely available, you can go there. Live in the suburbs here. The town has meetings. They have meetings. I think every 2 3 weeks. You go there. Um, raise issues, oversights. You're part of the system. If you want to
Yes.
be, a lot of people don't. But it's different from that being part of the system to just having to run your own thing. It's
No.
very interesting. It's very interesting. You have to run your own security. You have to run your own. Even I see guys with guys and girls with supercars in Nigeria. Just I always laugh and tell people like, well, there's a little corridor if you're in Abuja, like between Wuse and Asukoro corridor. You don't go to Ghana, don't go to Cairo, don't go to
You don't know with such
just
cars.
same thing
You
is
wouldn't
Lagos, you're lucky.
yeah,
Don't go too far.
don't go too far. You just maintain that safe
Corridor.
radius. Yeah.
Yes. So if you venture out of that corridor, you're on your own. Yes. It was sad to know. So, you know, moving to the next question, it's in 2022, NSAS reacted to Nigeria,
Yeah.
which is interesting to a lot of us. And me, I was very interested in seeing, because that was the first time in my lifetime, like I was too young for anything in the 90s, but that was the first time in my lifetime that I saw people action. And even there's some people in the West would argue that young people don't know anything. There's more of an argument in Western thought where more on the conservative side where they feel like when young people argue there's no basis for it because they don't know anything. They haven't worked, they haven't been in society. Advice the broken clock is twice, right twice in a day, right? Kind of thing. But it was a different thing to see in Nigeria. I've always thought that if you go into the history of younger people's movement, even down to the women's protests in Abeokuta and in Aba women's rights, a lot of it was driven by young women. A lot of it. So even down to that, I've always felt that they tend to have, personally, I feel like they tend to have the pulse of because they're the ones taking the brunt of it. You don't really have a future at the end of the day. So were you surprised or were you taken away by the shortened movement, by the short-lived movement?
No. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised because there had been, I mean, if you remember, there was an initial engagement on police brutality on Twitter, right? That went on for a while, you know, and I remember that a lot of rhetorics were coming. Oh, young people will just make noise on Twitter. Boots on the ground is where it counts, right? And there was also the oil subsidy protest, if you remember, some years before, which also started about the same thing, about the same way. So there's this, we seem to have this tendency, just like you said, when young people are complaining about something, there's the body language, it will blow over. They'll find something else to do, it will blow over. It can't be sustained. However, I think NSAS showed, even to for some of us and those that came before us within the movement, that there is a way protest can be organic, right? And there's a role for technology in all of this that can help as a mobilizer and a convening platform, right? That we had never seen, the role of technology in all of this. And before, previously, it will be the human rights groups trying to mobilize resources, but resources were coming out of the pockets of individuals. And I'm not sure the human rights groups even really contributed much resources. In fact, we were gated. To be honest, we were gated because there was also the narrative that you've not done anything. You've had your chance, you messed it up, you didn't do anything about it, right? So don't come and taint us with your tainted lens, you know. That back and forth plays a bit, and I think they opened up the space a bit for a selected human rights, civil society leaders to engage with them, you know. Um, so invariably, I'm saying it's a sustained movement. And I think it's a sustained movement that we kind of saw during the elections, because I stand corrected. I think it's the same group that were basically also in support of the Labour Party during the um, last election, because it kind of resonated, that party kind of resonated with them as per a breath of fresh air. You do things differently. The person that was the candidate looked like somebody, we were being presented with somebody that had an alternative narrative and does not have a long history on the corridors of powers, Um, so it's still there. When people say they're not there, I'm like, no, don't don't let's miss it. I think there's still, the NSAS movement is still very much alive, right? But it's, again, what we always miss is the engagement pattern. We're waiting for the label. The label might have changed, but the narratives are still there and the conversation still continues.
Given what you said, what would you say, given everything you said, given everything you talked about in terms of it's still there, it still has its strain, it played a role in a massive role in the last elections. Given everything you said, what would you say, as what are there lasting police reforms that could be traced to NSAS? We saw this week up, I believe it was last week as well, where the youth slogan for 2024 starts off with "We need degree," and it was very interesting. Not kind of surprising, but the police public relations people start tackling people who use this law. Yeah, it's always interesting for me personally to see those things. So, what would you say is any lasting police reforms and face the protests?
Lasting, I'll put in inverted commas, but the issue of the welfare of the police, I think the NSAS movement put that strongly on the table. And I believe the police welfare package was reviewed at that time. The issue of accountability, I think, came down very heavily, and a strategy for engagement. cannot be homogeneous. I think that was very clearly stated with the NSAS movement. So you'll find that within the police now, you would see then put forward the faces of younger officers, particularly in positions that would need engagement with the public. So, for example, the PRO in Lagos, the police PRO in Lagos is a good example, right? Um, and you see the fact that the police also have taken to the social media. I doubt if there's a state command that is not active, that is not on social media. They might not be active, but they're there, right? Um, you find them engaging depending on how vibrant the officer on that desk is. You find them engaging with issues on social media, responding to issues when they are put forward. The complaint response unit, I think, is one of the platforms that has been strengthened post the SARS. And in recent times, we see a monitoring platform of the complaint response unit in the office of the chairman of the Police Service Commission. So you see another layer. And when you engage with them at the Police Service Commission, it's because they also want to check the trends and pattern and be able, if the police is not seeing it, they want to trigger the police to say, be careful, look at this thing. On narrative of discourse, I think there's still um, there's still so much the police needs to learn, right? Um, if you look at the statements made by the police and you look at the statement made by the military, same statement, and you see the way they turned it around, right? Um, the police need to see that citizens are not their enemy. We are all gaming for the same thing. So when the young people are saying we no go agree for what? We're not going to agree to impunity. Yes, that's a democratic right, and it's a democratic ask. We're not going to agree to corruption. Yes, that's a tick for good governance. We will not agree to lack of accountability. Yes, it's a tick. But for you to take it and just say any protest is a no-no, the right of protest is a fundamental right, right? And you, as the law enforcement agency, have a responsibility to even protect me when I'm protesting, or to even give me the procedure and the process to which I can be, I can lawfully, within the remits of the law, air my grievances. It's not for you to come out and say no. You say no, then it looks like you're still counter young people. It won't work.
Yeah, it is very interesting. So it is very interesting. I wish, I do wish we had a ability to a, a, a republicanism with a smaller R, not party, but principles.
Yeah.
So I do wish we had humanity that principles. So
Mm.
if they have, they exist, I don't really think so. But principles as much as a country, maybe in smaller societies they might exist, but as a country, it doesn't seem to have a distinct. So, I mean, next thing we're doing is, Nigeria is typically in the news on accounts of terrorist acts that target markets, churches, and public spaces. Why? I know you kind of touched on it before, but why do you think Nigeria is unable to handle such violence?
Because we're not handling the root causes. We're sidestepping the root causes, right? And there seems to be, apart from sidestepping the root causes, there also seems to be a trend that when you take up arms against the state and you make the governance space unpalatable, Then the government listens to you. Then the government starts talking to you. Then they start negotiating with you and asking you, what do you need? And then we go into an amnesty process, you know. And you say to yourself, how do we turn this thing around? Why can't it be that you address, it's not something you can address immediately? Face out the response and how we would do it. Yes, you have military or security approach to it, but that security approach will stand on nothing if the core root causes, which are governance issues, are not addressed. If you listen to, I mean, I've been in workshops, not that I've that you've had colleagues that work in the Northwest, colleagues that work in the Northeast, some of them that worked in the South, even in the Southeast, tell the stories of some of these agitators or some of the people we have criminalized. You see, it's laden with impunity, it's laden with marginalization, it's laden with inequity. And these are not things guns would address, right? These are not issues that military would address. These are core governance issues. Some of them at the subnational level, some of them at the national level. Let me quickly say that the arm of government that is supposed to deal directly with citizens totally has collapsed. So you don't have local government authorities per se. You have governors nominating whoever it is that is going to be the local government chairman and who his cronies would be. So they do not engage with the people. They do not feel the pulse of the people. They are not the people. And for as long as we run this skewed system, we can't really head anywhere. And we know it. So why can't we turn it around and start doing the right thing? That's what baffles me. Nigerians are not I'll say Nigerians are the easiest people to rule. Yes, because they're not asking for too much. If you see the average Nigerian, light, water, a roof over his or her head, and the person the person can then start to have dignity of person, of labor, and you show him or her the right path, chances are they will not move back from it. And that's why you find they are constantly adoring and worshiping these individuals that seem to be throwing piecemeal their way and will do anything they ask them to do under the guise of ethnicity or religion.
Yeah. It's wild. It's wild. It's wild. It's wild. I fully. I'm sorry to mention his name, but I do. Yes, I follow Daily Farotimi on this thing, and I love the man, absolutely. He reminds everybody that one reason why people have together. If I get into technical, I'll tell you, well, they're becoming colonialist. Essentially, they slide into the colonial structure, which the colonial structure is made to keep you at a certain level, to keep the extraction of human resources, including human resources. When I say, I don't mean necessarily, by the time they become colonialists, and then they get people to work for them and they extract everything they want for free. And, you get, well, it's a little to nothing, I say for free. But you now get the locals slide in and then become that. So they look forward to me. Trying to buy their oils. I think that's his book. They slide to impoverish you and keep you at a certain level.
Yeah.
So anyway, given that, what would you say? What would you say are concrete measures to create a highly professional law enforcement apparatus that will be effective in maintaining law and order without infringing on the rights of citizens? I read a thread typical. I think he's posted it like twice. David Unday, so any person David Unday, who gives a thread, a very eloquent thread on how the Nigerian police is actually recruited. The lowest level is essentially the biggest the criminals you can find, which I think it happened this week where they started trying to work it back in Kano, where they said they recruited a bunch of what would you even call them? Guys. And they put them in police force, and then they're now claiming no, they're not in the police force, they're going to be the Hashiba, whether Hashiba or whatever. I don't know if it was excused. So the lowest level is recruited from, you know, known criminal elements.
Yes.
And then to get into the police academy, which is a 5-year course, is they're just talking about it, but it just reflected on how law enforcement, doesn't matter which one, police, EFCC, whichever one is structured generally. What would you say concrete measures, in your opinion, needed for a highly professional police apparatus?
First the recruitment approach and where we source from. Yeah. You need to make the police attractive for the kind of people you want to get into the police. So I usually would say that some years back, I think when Sierra Leone was coming out of the war and they were recruiting for their security agencies, they went to the universities, they went to the colleges, they went to the hubs, and it was thrown open, but they were very strategic in recruitment. For us, we throw it open, but we're not strategic. We're not headhunting. When a good firm would headhunt for its for the kind of staff or employees they are looking for. But for the police and even for the military, it's just thrown open. Anybody can come. And then when they talk about some of these amnesty procedures or programs, they are putting some of them into the law enforcement and security agencies. How would that work? We want highly professional individuals. We need to specialize our police. And when we say specialization, yes, you would have general duty officers, but general duty officers and specialized officers should go at par. At the point where we are in the police, when you're specialized officers are not promoted alongside. Their promotion process is not same as the general duty officers. And you have specialized officers also doing about the same thing general duty officers are doing. But when it's time for promotion, they are sidelined. So you find specialized officers, when they get in, want to convert to general duty. So what is the retainment strategy? Where are we looking at for recruiting? What's the attraction for coming into the force? What would be the attraction? What's the career path? These are things that need to be laid out and be clear. Within the next 5 years, if I join, this is what it's going to be. When you're saying constable level, if constable is even still school sat, right? Should it be schools? Could we look at school sat and target the secondary schools and look at, the best, and then have like a job fair? We've talked about it once and people laughed about it. I said, sell yourself to the people, allow people to ask questions, and then see if you will not get the kind of people we're looking for. 2, we stopped the short service entry in the police. I think that needs to come back. So we should have 3 levels. You have the cadets, ASPs, those from the university. You should have the short service. The military have short service. Why has the police collapsed short service? The police university, as far as I'm concerned, shouldn't be running regular courses. They should be running courses that would improve the police. So yes, you could do sociology. Yes, should we be studying philosophy in the Nigerian university?
I study philosophy. Why?
Oh, no.
I'll just
Yes, we
Yeah.
could study law, right?
Mm.
Should we be doing engineering? You know, specialized courses, forensic science, things that would improve the institution, not just any course. That was what civil society organizations were thinking of when they clamored and advocated for the police university. What is it doing now is far different from what it was supposed to do,
Mm.
right? These are, I mean, it's not rocket science. We can sit down, look at, even within the continent, we can draw lessons from other countries within the continent on how this process is being taken forward. Retainment is very key. Our retainment policy and strategy is very key. That I don't think we have.
Interesting. I would now I'm curious. I'd like to know what kind of philosophy they study in Nigeria. I don't know. I'll just, so I did philosophy and history in undergrad, so I would assume that people who encounter philosophy should not do some of the things the police people do. That would be my assumption. But maybe what kind of philosophy they're getting. So typically, I don't know, we're coming up on the hour. I don't know how much more time you have. I know we have a bunch of questions for you. You see, you are a very entertaining guest. Even though we watch your words, which is a good thing, I guess. It's a good thing. You're not as firebrand as Mr. Billy Farrell to me.
I know.
I love it, I guess. Oh, man, you can see the frustration of Nigeria and everybody in different ways. I don't know where we end up, but if you short for time, yes, you let
I think I
me
can
talk,
push
but
for I can push till about 15 to 11.
15 to 11, right? Good. Great. So, next to the question we have is you typically blame Nigeria's inadequate investment in human capital, which you are touching right now in terms of policy investment, especially in this case in education, educational sector. Is the trend changing for the better?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I really am not sure. I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. And I do not. I don't know what's wrong with us as an individual, as people. You know, not maybe not with us as a people, but with our government. Yeah. So when you see where they place priority, right? Um, and you see the key players in our government play priority on human capital development of their own personal space, of their children, right? Of their words. But as a country, no. If you look at the state of the infrastructure of the public schools, let's start from there, right? Then you look at the quality of the teachers that are being churned out, that are teaching these children in the public schools. So many of, even within, you have different layers of private schools, yeah, in the country. So according to your economy, or according to your means, right, you can have kids in private schools. Even at that, right? Once upon a time, scholarships were there and available that you kids will work hard because to get on a scholarship was something of honor. I went to my kids' school to pick up report sheets was last year. And then I noticed that a lot of parents, some of the older kids' parents were near a wall and they were just looking, browsing through. And then I had honors roll, honors roll, honors roll. I was like, okay, which one is honors roll? Me, I mean, we were just starting in this field. And called my sister and she explained it to me that, oh, that's usually would be maybe 95 upward, you know. And you see the kids coming with that excitement, trying to see if their names were on the rolls. You see, even when you engage with these children, you see the lineup of activities that they have in school that aids critical thinking, that aids public speaking, that aids, engagement with day-to-day life and what they are making of it. But if you go to our public schools, it's the same, it's totally the other way around. And they go through that process and then they land in the workplace, right? And if you run an organization or you're working, you see you notice the Herculean task that we have in shaping, not trying to shape individuals that have gone through through this education system into the workplace system. So when you were saying what kind of philosophy are they teaching, you're trying to say you're just trying, you're not preparing people for a future. You're not preparing them to take a particular position or to even work in the public space. I was opportune to sit in National Economic Council meetings some years back, and this was a statement. This was also the position of Bill Gates and the former emir of Kano at that time, Sanusi, at that economic council meeting, that when we churn out our success stories is number of buildings, number of schools that have been built, number of roads that are being um, developed, number of hospitals that have been built, but we do not pay attention to the manpower that will run the hospitals, that will run the schools, that would maintain the roads, and asking the governors and the VP, because they are the members and some of the ministers that were there, that we should pay attention to human capital development. We're still saying the same thing in 2024.
You know, it's very interesting. I don't know who was arguing with me once. I said that anybody in Nigeria in the last even 20 years that is in public school, then yeah, definitely done by choice. Most times it's the highest domestic justice. So that's people that, because I mean, I went to FGC Lagos. And by the time I went, I got into King's College and FGC Lagos. By the time I went, it was still prestigious. But by the time I was finishing in the late 90s, it was, I
Was
don't
it?
know. I don't know if it, I think even then is, I thought, I don't know if people would be enthusiastic giving the ushers. I know then it was like everybody, I mean, guys I had
Yes.
in school, I could list people that were in schools because I ended up going to King's College briefly, then FGC Lagos was the place when we switch. My classmates, they didn't tell anyone. I mean, if I start calling names, I should that calibers of individual girls and boys that went to school with them would be in those schools today. Whether
Yes.
it's King's College, Queen's College, FGC Lagos.
Yes.
But then again, I'm not there, so I don't know.
No, no,
Uh,
no, totally agree with you. I went to Federal Government Girls College, Shagamu. I was in Shagamu. And even now, it would, I mean, it wouldn't be an option for my daughter. Do you understand? Whereas thinking, oh, your mom went here, I would want my daughter to go there. It's not on the table
yeah.
for discussion.
It's sad. I can imagine. The time when we first had my first child, and I was looking at her civics yesterday. They were giving her a history of New York, the New York Archdiocese, and was trying to. She claimed she had read the book. And I can bring the book. Let me see. It's a picture graph in a day. I was looking at the civics, and I was like, man, you don't have any of this in Nigeria. When she's 10 now. When she was born, I was always thinking like, man, maybe you should go to. Yeah, I hadn't been to Nigeria in a while then, but I should. I was thinking roundabout to see my.
I'll tell you something. My dad is a professor of history. And my nieces were in Corona at that time. And they came home, and the history they were being taught, civics, was America and Britain, right? And democracy was around what was happening in the US. So I said, okay, do you know MK Abiola? And my niece was, who's that? I'm like, seriously? And my dad sat down, like, what is happening here? So we had to now start consciously having that conversation around the growth of our own democracy, the flaws that have been there. And I'm saying to myself, why are we doing this to ourselves? Why are you teaching our kids about UK, Britain, and the US? And you totally leave out, like you said, history was taken out, but I think history is back. But history is back. We just bring it back. You're not making a conscious effort to make history attractive for people to go to university to study so that you now have a new breed of historians that would carry on the torch. You just say history is back. What does that mean? History is back.
Interesting though, because I didn't see the pipeline, even though I'm doing people wonder, even though even though I'm doing graduate studies in history now, but that's a whole different different reason. There's a part of it that's also I'm able to do it because the U.S. military pays for it. But if it wasn't the case, I'll probably be doing graduate studies in
Philosophy.
left, I guess. Yeah, man, I got kids. Something is
But you need to
I love it. I really do. But to do a PhD in philosophy is interesting. I would say no. I actually struggled with that. Like, should I do that? Because I also did learn undergrad as well. So I was like, should I? But philosophy is, I'll probably be very detached. Most philosophers have, in 20th century, have very interesting lives. I'll put it that way.
yeah.
I think maybe the most effective philosophers are the ones that we don't even consider philosophers. In my opinion, people like C.S. Lewis, who we wouldn't consider as a philosophical person, but if you read his works and other things, he was highly philosophical and theological in his works. But we talk about the much more the ones which who had all this weird lifestyles for cool. I was like, hey, it's boring stuff. It's just boring stuff, man. Like boring stuff. Anyway, so, what do you say are your thoughts about the Nigerian judiciary as a bulwark against the erosion of human rights in Nigeria?
My network. I'm not sure if it's mine or if it's his, but it's on. Sorry, you went off a bit. It broke. Network.
All right, so because I think it feels up a little bit.
Yes, it froze. I
Okay.
didn't hear the question.
Okay, so what would you say are your thoughts as the Nigerian judiciary as a bulwark against the erosion of human rights in Nigeria? Especially putting this thing, a lot of Nigerians have expressed the disappointment in the judiciary's handling of electoral cases in the last 10 years. Some people point to the Uzodinma decision as the nail in the coffin. Um, what I think is great, I guess, it depends. But most people point to most keen political watchers do point to the Uzodinma decision in the Imo State as the initial one, not this current one, but the one of 4 years ago as the final nail in the coffin. But how would you talk about public confidence and in terms of the judiciary as a bulwark against the erosion of human rights in Nigeria?
I think the judiciary, like every other government structure, has also fallen victim to every other thing we all are saying, right? So capacity first of you question the capacity of some of the judges, that are there. You question also to question is also the integrity of some of them. Um, and then if you move back a bit, because we do a bit of work, we do a lot of work with the judiciary. When we look at the front end, we also look at the back end. And through the back end, you're looking at the structural challenges and the systemic issues that are also in place that they have to also deal with. above it all is the politicization of the entire process. So all that said, I would say that the judiciary can do better, right? The judiciary needs to do better in the country because seemingly we say the judiciary is the last hope of the common man. And when we're getting body languages or judgments from the judiciary that really questions the integrity and independence of the judiciary, then can it really be the last hope of the common man? Then it means that the judiciary is basically saying that self-help is the way to go. No need, don't come because if you come to the judiciary, you do not stand the chance. You might not stand the chance of getting of the right person, yeah, getting what's due to him or her. So then the other option would be self-help. And that's what we do not want.
Yeah. The one that let's turn to women. I just, well, let me not assume I'll be wrong because you're a woman, you have to. Oh, we all should love each other. Anyway, so the West should want to argue and tell you that multiple genders. Hopefully, we don't have that. We don't have need for that conversation deeply in Nigeria, even though we have some of it. But turning to women, how would you say they are faring in the current space in Nigeria? What would you say are the current practices that continue to undermine women's attainments for full rights? If so, what are they? And the key points you want to address in terms of the role of women, situation of women in Nigeria. You touched on, in terms of representation and that let's add on to it. So, but just in a more expansive way.
I think women in Nigeria are doing a lot, and if you break us into different components or different sectors, so even if we look at us from let's start from the judiciary, I think we've been able to produce chief judges, heads of courts across the country, even in the northern part of the country that seemingly is supposed to be conservative. We have chief judges that are women in some of the states. This chief judge in Kano is a woman. And I think Adamawa State also. If we look at us through the lens of the universities also, we have quite a number of female vice chancellors or principal officers within the universities. Private sector also, we have women running heads of banks,
I think
firms.
nine women run banks in Nigeria now.
You said?
I think about the number should be 9 women that run banks in Nigeria.
Yes, in Nigeria, yes. Now, so we seem to be we seem to be progressing along that line. What are the challenges that, except in the political space? And political space is more of elected position. But if you're saying appointive, yeah, they seem to be conceding some slots to us. But that's what it is, tokenism, you know. Um, but if you now look at it generally, what challenges do we continue to face? I think generally across board, for it to get better, young girls must have access to good education. Education is key. Mentorship is key. For the young women and even for some of us, mentorship is key. You need to have people that would hold your hands. You have people that would guide and open that door for you and lead you through the door. We also need to have, I'm strong on affirmative action, right? That we need strong affirmative policy and affirmative practice in the country that would allow us be more visible, you know. Um, and let's see how we juggle all of this together over a period of time and see how far we can go. But if it's not intentional and it's not deliberate, just a few of us will still keep coming up. And the few of us that would keep coming up might be just a few of us within a particular socioeconomic um, ecosystem. And we need to fill that ecosystem, or else it will become an elitist thing, and it would look like the average girl, the average joy, the average Hawa on the street might not stand a chance. So we need to continue to push women forward, provide that space for us to engage. The economic factor is very key. I tell people, I said, the way where I see it glaringly is when I travel. And you say the male line and the female line. The female line is almost always shorter than the male line, and within that short line, find that maybe half or a quarter are attached to a male on the other line. Just a few would travel on their own. So that's a typical example, you know. So we need to, when we say economic empowerment is, I'm not one for tokenism. I'm saying open the space, allow us to engage within the space, get us strong affirmative action and affirmative practices, and that allows us over a period of time to build our skill sets, build our competence, strong mentorship and coaching that progresses us, and then see if we would not be able to occupy the space.
Strong affirmative action.
Not
You define that though.
Not in words, 30%, 35% on paper. But you are conscious and you are deliberate about it. You are not asking questions of why she cannot, right? You're not the one, supposed to be the one to make the nomination, and you're the one giving 10 reasons why she can't, right? Not 50, not 5 reasons of why she should be. We need to turn it around.
Don't you think, if you define it that way, don't you think that becomes tokenism? That becomes, if you're in the West, you might call it that generally identitarianism. Don't you think that is, in essence, what we have in Nigeria already? I think what we have in Nigeria is called federal character. So you're just adding females to federal character.
Mm-hmm.
In other countries, by the way, in some, what they call it, positive discrimination, affirmative action in America, which, I mean, personally, I just think factually it's all obviously destructive, in my opinion. And also, if you define it as opening the space and letting people grow within the space, it sounds great to me. But once you start defining as a federal character, which is where you're from, Malaysia or India, it's called positive discrimination. In America, they call it affirmative action, which statistically shows that since the implementation of those policies, certainly in America, they've done it so to, in fact, they've been more destructive from a statistical perspective. Or not even talking psychological, they've been more destructive to the intended target than any other thing in so many ways. It's something we can go into if you want, but it's just, I just think if people, if you sort out the pipeline, just like you're saying, education, whether you have to make more schools to let them develop within themselves, or pay more attention to a curriculum to develop females and males and all those kind of things, they're more healthier. We're giving people the opportunities and not forcing any kind of quota system. I think it's healthier, but you are free to define it down. That's just the when you take a look at the West today and philosophical I think that they are philosophical and origins. This Simone de Beauvoir. Her thought was women should even have the option to stay alone. It's giving the option to stay at home, women to stay at home. Which is similar to the message of first wave feminism in America, in the West generally. So I think it's a lot different from when you say open up, have healthy structures to let people. But not just me. I think if you see it that way, that's why I just wanted to know why you say affirmative action. I think a lot of women are just like you said, doing great things in Nigeria.
I think it has to be a
A
mix
good
of
example I have is so there's a good example I have is the way people like this lady won Senate seat, fighting
cookie.
Betty, yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
I think that's, don't get me wrong, I think it's all the same, that's in the system, not endorsing it, it's just,
I guess so. But she stood ahead and she was consistent and she stayed on it over a period of yeah.
yeah.
I get you. I think it has to be a combination of the two, right? Because as we open up the space, right, that's at the bottom, and we clog and unclog the clogged parts, right? There has to be an element of still at that at a for a time being, you know, of getting. It's just a way of further unclogging the space. You know, it might not be forever until because the system is really very skewed for now, right? And policies are not static. My
That's probably, that's probably, you have to think that at the end of anything actually when you want to cut eventually. The authority is saying, I was back in, I think the last one the authority was Senator O'Connor who just passed. The authority is saying, look, this is illegal. What you're doing. We get you in, but essentially it's paraphrasing, but this is illegal, and it was illegal. And at some point in time, this needs to end for the health of the society. I think it ended too late. It should have been ended in 93, in my opinion. Given the prevalence of the statistics that were there. But I do think, like you said, yeah, women, so many women have very capable, who knows, capable minister maybe in the history of Nigeria is probably a conjurer, in my opinion. Um, I think so. I think if you don't rate her number one, you'd probably put her in his top three. All team. In my opinion, I think maybe even team pretty much in the history of Nigeria. I'd put her in the top three, top five. I don't think there's been a serious conversation in the history of Nigeria. Like the top, if you're going to name the top five, top four all-time great ministers in Nigeria, I don't think any serious conversation can be had with that name, in my opinion. But it's neither here nor there. As we round up here, round this up. In terms of Nigeria's future, what keeps you up awake at night? And finally, what gives you hope about Nigeria?
What keeps me up at night? The division, right, that we seem to have within our polity. I mean, my partner is from the north central. We have a kid that is growing up in Abuja, right? So does not know. he doesn't. He doesn't know. He hasn't experienced what we're talking about because he's very sheltered, and there's so many like him, like that, right? And I fear that if we don't get things right now he can pick friends, or we're picking friends, we're picking social um, ecosystems for him. But he's going to step out on his own one day. And I don't want anybody telling him the story of how Idoma people are this, are that, and that makes him less who he believes he is, or the fact that his mom is Yoruba, and because his mom is Yoruba, cannot aspire for anything in Benue State because, those kind of little, you say little, but those are the things that are dividing us, right? In his own little head, He has not his little head. He has friends because we're being conscious. He has friends that are Muslims. He has friends that are Christians. He has friends from families that don't even go to church or go to the mosque. And there's no problem with that. I don't want him. I wouldn't want him a couple of years down the line not to see his friend as his friend because his friend is from a different social group. I'd love to see a Nigeria that we draw on our strength, right? And make the country as great as it ought to be. Because the potentials are there. We're just being selfish in our little corners. What gives me hope? Because every day I wake up and I see a bright, a new day. So it means that, okay, this is another day for another chance at trying to get it right. Really, that's it. But because if you look at the indicators, you probably wouldn't have hope. But the mere fact you sleep and you wake up, you open your eyes, then there's hope.
Yeah, that's well said. I always tell people to add on people who was born and brought up in Lagos through
Yeah.
their parents are Yorubas. I was probably say I was in that kind of bubble. Pretty much, I was, even when I speak Yoruba, they look at me and I don't speak like somebody that grew up in the East, which for them, it is kind of weird. To me, when people pick that, to me is ridiculous. Language travel, language is organic, language is not static. So you expect me that my kids that were all can spend my time in the East than I have. At their ages, they expect me speaking internally perfectly. But when you go down there, you discover, even in the East, if I go and I run for office, I wouldn't be considered one of them to be able to run for office.
Yes. Even me.
And the truth is, look, if you look at all the people that they might have spent some years overseas, and the Chimake spent a couple of years out here. He was very familiar with so many people when he was out here. It wasn't up here for even a decade. Even KDB used to know him when he was in Massachusetts. But he was born and brought up in England. All of them, same thing. Whether you go to Hope is or Dimna, wherever, they are born and brought up there. The 5 time, he only has a better chance to put it out there. So I think it's and if I get to Lagos, they'll tell me, well,
Where are you from?
so so it's interesting. I always ask people, so you're in Nigeria, I don't really know what it is. This is people should define it. It's very interesting, but who knows? Who knows? It's interesting that keeps you up at night. I think, in my experience, even as we get older, it's surprising that I have friends who we all went to unity schools together, who are always trying to beat some tribal dream.
Yeah.
It's like, bro,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, most of my classes that same thing, the Edomites, this man, it's like, really?
Yeah.
It's like, what's good? When I was talking to one of my classmates, somebody posted something in the group and they did a live stream, they did a FaceTime, 5 of them.
Mhm.
And all 5 of them are actually of Igbo origins. And I was talking to them, guys like, yeah, can't you see? This is my good friend who's Yoruba, lives in the UK, was married to a white lady. And they've been married for close to 20 years. And he has 2 kids. And the wife and the 2 kids haven't ever been to Nigeria either. And he's now beating these guys. I'm like, bro, those guys that you're talking about, if you're looking at their parentage, all those guys have never been to the East. Most of them have, 2 of them have neither like a Yoruba.
Oh.
They don't really speak
Oh.
all right, is this a representation of like some Igbo power or something like that? This is the power. It's like a crazy thing. Nobody knows it's not making themselves style. It's not even like you can't be thinking like, what about you think I was I'm like, yeah, that place, like, those trails, and why you care about these things? Like, what is it?
Yes.
You
What
live
does
in
it take?
Judiciary, you bought a house, nobody's asking you where you're from, pay the
Mhm.
trails. You want to start
Yes.
meeting with them in Nigeria.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
yeah, it's sad. It's sad. It's sad. I don't know how you get with this. I don't know about getting out. Just maybe started from this. But it was interesting. It's been um, a very, very fun conversation. I've enjoyed the conversation, personally.
Same here.
I appreciate your time.
Thank
I appreciate you being a guest in the podcast. We appreciate you being a guest in the podcast. We hope to have you back. Um, there's so many things we'd love to touch on and have, even more in-depth conversations on. Um, uh, as time goes on, hopefully would just stay and get to bring you back for more conversations. But we thank you.
you.
We
Thank you.
appreciate you for Thank you so much. Let me start this first. Let's see.